Assalamualaikum and good evening. You're with me, Aiman Zahira, the host for our discussion today. In this beautiful evening, we'll be talking about government procurement, which is not an alien term in the government sector. We also humbly welcome three panels to share their insights on this topic. First, we have Encik Arif from the Ministry of Finance. Then, from the Accountant General Department, we have Encik Ubadah. And last one is Professor Aiman, an academician from University Kebangsaan Malaysia. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Generally, we know that the government procurement had long been practiced by government all around the world, including in our country, Malaysia. So without further ado, my first question for Encik Arif is, what is actually meant by procurement and how is it different from normal purchasing? And also, what is the flow of procurement practice in our country? Please welcome Encik Arif.
Okay. Thank you for the question, Aiman. Okay, what is actually a procurement? Procurement is actually the process of finding and agreeing to terms and acquiring goods, services, or works from an external sources, or uh, as we all know, which is outsourcing. For example, like tendering, quotations on direct purchasing. Procurement generally involved in making decisions under conditions of scarcity. It helps business in buying the right product for the right price. And what is the difference between purchasing and procurement? Well, it is actually not very different because purchasing is actually part of procurement, and I will explain it later during the procurement process. Okay, next we move on to the procurement process or procurement flow. As you guys can see that over the in the slides, the orange part is the purchasing part. So purchasing is actually part of procurement because for the procurement flow or procurement process, we can divide it into three parts. The first part is the research part. The second part is actually the purchasing part, and the last part is for the recording part. So we can move on to for on these three parts. The first part is the research part. First, a company need a good strategy because a good strategy for the procurement process so that they can buy the right product that they want in the right price. So first they need to identify the product or services that they want. Next, they will find the supplier and ask them for quotations of the price. So this will enable them to analyze all the price and all the details of the product that the suppliers offer. Next, they will instead of they also can go for head-to-head auctions or direct negotiation based on what strategy they want. This is for the examples. Next, we move on to the purchasing part. Uh, after analyzing all the quotations, all the price, all the details that the suppliers provide, they will have to make a decision, and they have to agree to one supplier, and this is where the purchasing part come from. They have to negotiate with the supplier for the contracts on what is the payment, when do they have to pay, the delivery parts, and so on. After agreeing with the terms and contract with the supplier, then they will arrange so that when they will receive the products, when they want to pay the products, and so on. And lastly is the recording part. They have to form quality assurance when they receive the product. So they have to check everything, every single thing from top to bottom of the product, so that there will no default on the product itself. And lastly is analyzing the result margin and record it properly. I think that is for the procurement flow or process.
Thank you so much, Encik Arif, for the information. From his sharing, now we understood that the procurements were made to drive economic excellence of our local businesses and connect the society to the government through business transactions. My question did not stop there. I still have one more question for Encik Arif. Specifically in Malaysia, what are the kinds of procurement that the supplier or contractor can engage in, and how do they differ from one another? Please welcome.
Well, thank you for the questions. That is actually a brilliant question when we talk about this subject. In Malaysia, we have three main types of procurement, which are direct purchase, quotations, and tender. There are different groups of procurement, mainly due to its difference in value. Direct purchase can only be done for small projects under 50,000 ringgit. Quotation is for those between 50,000 and 500 ringgit, and while tenders are for the huge project with value over half a million. It is important to categorize all these procurement as bigger values may have more to process. From the licensing aspect, quotations and tender must be registered with the government before joining the procurement, while direct purchase is exempt for any license because normally this method is only used in urgent situations. Last but not least, is on the criteria. Direct purchase can be made by any known supplier either from local or overseas. However, quotations need to be done by comparing against a minimum of 5 quotations, while tender is strictly specified for local tenders, which is in line with the objective of government procurement to help strengthen the economy of Malaysia business.
Thank you again, Encik Arif. That was such an informative explanation. We can see that there are three groups of government procurement with different attributes of each depending on its value, license, and even supplier criteria. Moving on, I would like to ask our next guest, Encik Upada. In an ideal world, everything will work perfectly. However, reality is often disappointing. In this case, from your accounting perspective, what are the common problems that normally being associated with procurement? I welcome Encik Upada.
Thank you very much for the question. So, if we want to talk about the common problems of procurement, we must first categorize the issues of procurement. So, we can actually divide it into three. The first one is the weakness in procurement. The second one is the non-compliance to regulations, and the third one is the irregularities in procurement. So, the weakness in procurement is actually the limitation that exists in procurement. An example of this is the procurement agreed is not the best value out there, meaning there are better qualities out there, there are better prices that can be offered and such. And also it can be also the asset is not fully utilized to its max potential, or even the agreed procurement is not within the original specification. And also the handling of the procurement may be inexperienced because of lack of training. So the second one is the non-compliance to regulation. So the non-compliance to regulation is pretty much a failure or refusal of complying with the rules and regulations and policies. So an example of this, the product of procurement being higher than what was a higher cost than the market, or even the payment has been made, but there were no maintenance that occurred, or even there were no maintenance handled at all because of the insufficient budget. So there is also the third irregularities in procurement, which is the asymmetry of service rendered. Asymmetry of service rendered is pretty much there has been a delay in procurement, or it is not within the original scope, or even there is non-existence of maintenance, or even the project has been abandoned. It was agreed earlier but then abandoned later on. So all these issues can be pretty much seen as because there were lack of proper planning, or even lack of transparency, or even lack of training. So these issues usually occur because of this kind of things, because of these three things: lack of planning, lack of transparency, and lack of training. Thank you.
Thank you for the insights, Encik Upada. Issues in procurement is mainly because there are parties trying to take advantage out of the regulations weaknesses. So, Encik Upada, now that we know of the problems with procurement, what have been done by the government to achieve best practice of procurement?
Thank you very much for the question. So to handle all these issues, I can actually answer it in two ways, which is what are the best practices of procurement, and what are the examples that have been conducted by the government to show that they are trying to achieve the best procurement possible. So to achieve the best practice of procurement, actually the solutions to the problems that I've mentioned earlier is uh, it can be divided into two. The first one is ensuring the management process is conducted in accordance to the stipulated regulations, and also enhancing the knowledge and skills in handling the procurement. Like I mentioned earlier, the first one is the lack of proper planning, lack of transparency, and lack of training. So if we were to conduct a proper planning and using the right methods of handling this procurement, even provide enough budget allocation, or even the quotation is clear, such as the notice of the quotation, the reports of the quotation can be is transparent, and even the committee is exists for such service to be rendered, and even the proper maintenance. All this can actually help in ensuring the management process, and also if we were to be able to provide trainings to the employees that handle this procurement, and make sure there is a job rotation, which can minimize the risk of the issues in procurement. So if we were to do all these kind of things, we can actually achieve the best practice of procurement. So we move on to the next one. So this is actually the example of government green procurement. What is the government green procurement? Government green procurement is actually an initiative that was introduced by the government, which is to the definition of GGP is actually the acquisition of products, services, or work in the public sector that considers environmental criteria to conserve natural environment and resources, and minimizes and reduce the negative impact of human activities. So this is one of the few benefits of this initiative, which is to improve the local innovation, increase company competitiveness, improve environmental performances, innovative sustainable solution, long-term savings, etc., etc. All these are actually the an example of what have been done by the government in order to achieve the best practice of procurement. Thank you.
Such an extensive explanation made by Encik Ubadah, and thank you for that. Honorable viewers, we have already looked into the environment of government procurement in Malaysia as a whole. Next, we will fly around the world and look into the bigger picture of procurement in planet Earth. With the current rise in the awareness towards sustainability, how did Asia Pacific countries adapting to their procurements? We would love to hear Professor Aiman's view for this concern. Please welcome.
Okay, so there are progress towards tackling illegal lodging in Asian countries, and it's believed that public procurement can be the influential tool to shift markets and promote legal and sustainable supply chains. And here are three examples from the Asian Pacific countries, which are Japan, Thailand, and Vietnam. So in Japan, the basic policy of promoting green purchasing was revised in 2016 to a new Clean Wood Act, which is designed to promote the use and distribution of legal harvested wood and wood products. The policy is made mandatory for ministers and agency and other national institutions, but there are currently no penalties for non-compliance. And next is on Thailand, which has a voluntary green procurement policy that covers a handful of timber and paper products. The implementation applies to regional and local government offices. And then lastly is on Vietnam, which is the only country which does not have a procurement policy as yet, but there is a growing political momentum for policy which has increased since 2018. And then currently in 2020, Vietnam Prime Minister directed the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development to work on an indicator to be adopted for all timber purchase throughout public procurement.
Professor, if I may add on a question, since today we are living in this global pandemic of COVID-19 around, how are the procurement response toward this risky virus?
The procurement on COVID-19 response is what all viewers want to hear, and the world received the exciting news that the first COVID-19 vaccine was ready to be rolled out, with nearly 7.25 billion doses have been pre-purchased by countries and organizations around the globe. And of course, almost 54% of these vaccine doses was brought by the high income countries. And among those countries, the two best supplied countries were Canada, which pre-ordered almost 9 doses of COVID-19 vaccine per person of their citizens, of their residents, and also India, which has ordered 1.5 billion doses, more than any other individual country. And this was mainly due to allowing its largest manufacturing vaccine manufacture to be conducted in India. And then, but with all this uh, distribution, we need to also take into consideration and concern towards the low and middle income countries on how they will obtain COVID-19 vaccine. And one of the solution is from COVAX, which is a joint funded for equitable distribution of COVID-19 vaccine established by World Health Organization. And then there were also other ways to access by ways of volunteering to host clinical trials and exchange for doses. But forecasts is predicted that looking into the situation, it will be sensible that high-income countries will provide their excess doses to those countries which needed it the most.
Thank you, Prof. I see that our discussion today is only getting exciting over time, but I can only have one last question. If you look into the other side of the world, people were talking about Brexit here and there. In your opinion, Professor, how will Brexit affect its public procurement?
One of the latest event which just occurred a week ago, certainly there will be major changes towards UK public procurement. Since before Brexit, UK would automatically be part of any trades deal the EU reached with other countries. But with the UK procurement regulation no longer bounded by EU law from 1st of January 2021. So one of the first changes is that there will be no tariff or quotas on goods, but the goods transported between UK and EU will still be subjected to custom and other controls, and extra paperwork is expected to cause a great hassle. And then next is on the joint partnership council that will be established to ensure the newly agreed deal is properly applied and interpreted and will resolve any conflict between the United Kingdom and EU. It will have two co-chairs, one from the UK and one from the EU side. And then lastly is on the procurement policy note that encourages to reserve low value tenders for SMEs and supplier in specific geographic region. And this new regulation is which aims to tackle inequality, create new business, jobs and skill, as well as increasing supply chain resilience, encouraging entrepreneurship and attracting new entrants.
Thank you so much, Professor Aiman, for such a concise answer. Respected panels, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude our session today, procurement is a tool that is able to create a social value through business support and sustainability effort, only if everyone's serious in playing their respective roles. Time is surely jealous of us. And with that, I would like to express my gratitude to all of our panels who had been willing to share on their knowledge with us today. Also, thank you for our viewers. I'll see you in the next series of discussion with more exciting topic. Assalamualaikum.